Welcome to today's Explainer. We're jumping right into a massive health policy shift that's been making some serious waves lately: the proposed return of the presidential fitness test. But, as we dive into the source material, you're going to see pretty quickly that this isn't just about making kids run laps in gym class. It's actually the anchor for a really sweeping set of health and agricultural initiatives that were recently outlined by HHS Secretary nominee Bobby Kennedy in a Fox News interview. So we're going to unpack the whole shebang: the history, the really alarming stats driving this, and the multi-layered solutions they're putting on the table. To really grasp why there's this sudden push to bring back a national fitness test, we actually have to rewind all the way to 1961. As Kennedy pointed out in the interview, President John F. Kennedy was the original champion of this program. And he praised, and I absolutely love this phrasing by the way, the beef jerky toughness of the American people. He credited that specific toughness for taming the wilderness and winning world wars. JFK literally called it beef jerky toughness. It's this foundational belief that physical vitality equals national strength, and that idea is serving as the absolute bedrock for this modern initiative. Okay, so here's our roadmap for today. We'll start by looking at that 1961 fitness baseline. Then we'll break down America's current health crisis, look at what reinstating the fitness test actually means, and finally, we'll explore flipping the food pyramid and this big regenerative farming push. Let's kick things off with Section 1, the 1961 fitness baseline, and a look at how this policy originally got its start. So, according to the source, the trajectory of this fitness program has been a bit of a roller coaster over the decades. It originally kicked off under JFK in 1961, and for over 50 years, it was an absolute staple in American PE classes. But then, it was officially discontinued during the Obama administration back in 2013. Now, fast forward to today, and a full reinstatement has been announced, with the goal of getting it back into schools across the country by this autumn. Moving right along to Section 2, America's current health crisis. Let's look at the numbers driving this change. Kennedy points out a really stark contrast from the past. Back in 1960, right around when the original fitness test was dreamed up, America's childhood obesity rate was just 3%. And what's wild to think about is that even at that incredibly low, single-digit number, JFK considered it a national security and public health concern, especially when he looked over at Europe, which was sitting at just 1% at the time. We really need to keep this baseline in mind as we look at where the country is at today. Because, wow, things have changed. Fast forward 60 years, and advocates point to a massive leap. Today, a whopping 20% of American children are obese. That is a huge dramatic jump from that 3% in the 60s. And according to the interview, this specific data point means American kids are now some of the sickest and most obese in the world. So that's the primary catalyst for thrusting the fitness test back into the spotlight. And here's the thing, this crisis definitely isn't just isolated to the kids. It heavily impacts adults too. A staggering 70% of American adults are now classified as either overweight or obese. The source material really emphasizes that this gives us the highest chronic disease burden of any country on Earth. It paints a pretty grim picture of a population-wide issue, one that the nominee argues is going to require a massive, systemic intervention to fix. Which brings us to Section 3, reinstating the fitness test and the immediate solutions being proposed right now. To kickstart this reinstatement and really drum up some public hype, promotional events are actually already underway. And the source details a pretty unexpected test run. Get this, professional WWE wrestlers recently showed up at a boys' club in Atlantic City, New Jersey, to run 70 kids through the paces of these new exercises. Honestly, it's a super strategic, high-energy way to make physical testing feel culturally relevant and, well, just plain fun for kids today. So what's this test actually going to look like when it hits your local gymnasium this autumn? Well, students nationwide are going to be required to knock out a series of core physical exercises. The specific metrics they highlighted in the interview include things like sprints, pull-ups, and push-ups, right alongside a battery of other tests. The goal here is to establish a really measurable, standardized baseline for physical capability coast to coast. They want to bring back those exact grueling metrics to recapture that 1960s toughness. But let's move to Section 4, flipping the food pyramid, because as the source emphasizes, you can't just exercise your way out of a systemic health crisis. According to the interview, the absolute root of the nation's sky-high chronic disease burden sits right on our dinner plates. A mind-blowing 70% of the calories Americans consume right now come from ultra-processed foods. I mean, think about that. When 7 out of every 10 calories are heavily processed, Advocates argue that no amount of sprints or pull-ups in the school gym can completely outpace the metabolic damage that's happening. To tackle this, the nominee's proposed initiative aims to radically shift our dietary guidelines. The stated goal? To literally flip the traditional food pyramid upside down. The whole focus is going to shift toward prioritizing natural, healthy products. They want to drastically cut down our intake of those ultra-processed ingredients that have basically completely taken over the American food supply over the last few decades. And that brings us to Section 5, the regenerative farming push. Because to change the food on the table, you have to change how it's actually grown. So we're expanding our scope here to target the real systemic root cause, the agricultural systems that produce our food in the first place. According to the source, a new executive order has just been signed directing a massive cross-agency team-up. The Department of Health and Human Services, the EPA, and the USDA are all being ordered to work directly with top farmers. Their mission? To scale up what's known as regenerative farming practices across the entire country. Now, you might be wondering why this sudden urgency from these massive government agencies? Well, it's driven by a highly alarming environmental warning highlighted in the interview. Advocates are warning that at our current rate, we literally only have 60 harvests left. 60! This astonishing claim is blamed on the widespread, heavy use of commercial pesticides and herbicides. They argue these chemicals are fundamentally destroying the vital topsoils we desperately need to grow nutrient-dense food. The source presents regenerative farming as the ultimate silver bullet for this impending crisis, and they outline some really multifaceted benefits. Advocates claim it improves overall crop yields and opens up lucrative new markets for our farmers. But crucially, it aims to preserve those degrading topsoils and produce food that has a much higher density of essential micronutrients. Plus, by getting rid of those harsh industrial pesticides, it actually keeps the farmers themselves safe from constant exposure to toxic chemicals. And just as a really stark reminder of exactly why that farmer safety matters so much, the source points to a deeply troubling statistic. It claims that the state of Iowa currently reports the highest cancer rate in the entire world. Advocates and policymakers driving this initiative link this severe health outcome directly to the prolonged, heavy spraying of toxic crop chemicals in major agricultural zones. It is a sobering data point for sure, and it connects agricultural policy directly back to that human health crisis we started with. So, as we wrap up this explainer, looking at everything from bringing back 1960s-style school fitness tests to completely overhauling how American soil is farmed, we're left with one massive question. Can a two-pronged approach, mandatory physical testing for the youth, combined with sweeping systemic agricultural reform, actually be enough to reverse the nation's immense chronic disease burden? Will this really ambitious callback to the 60s translate to a healthy reality for us today, or are the systemic hurdles simply too high to clear?